which you may scan to submit your questions. Welcome to the 32nd Aapresid Congress, to a lecture, as its name says it. Let's think about Argentina. Let's rethink about Argentina. A productive federal approach. I will introduce the speakers. Juan is a lawyer. He graduated from Buenos Aires University. He was a superintendent for the insurance department of Argentina. He's also general coordination of the International Association of Insurance Supervisors. In the private sector, he has been the director of several companies in the textile and agriculture industries, and he's currently he works at a coordination bureau. It's a bureau that coordinates production in Argentina. And Pablo Javkin, he has a degree in law. He was also a member of the parliament in Santa Fe, and now this is his second term as mayor of the city of Rosario. I was going to share some opening words, but in this session we're going to rethink about the past history in Argentina. This wish to grow as a federal country, a wish which was never achieved, starting with our constitution that was drafted in 1853, when Buenos Aires joined the constitution, and all the amendments to the constitution. We have always supported this national feeling and willingness to become a federal country, to have wealthy, rich provinces where citizens are able to grow, be happy. We have achieved this somehow, but we are still indebted to our society, to society as a whole. With this statement from Sarmiento in 1868, I promise, I tell you that in Chilico we are a loop. In Tandil we are an exception to the rule. In Tandil we have made a lot of progress, but we still think about this federal approach, which we are never achieving. Now, my question is, why is the lack of a federal approach not the root of all our problems in Argentina? The lack of industrial development, the lack of opportunities in inland Argentina, the structural poverty. So in order to talk about this and discuss this, we have Juan and Pablo. I know that Pablo is an advocate in this area. The same is true for the other speaker. So first I will give the floor to Pablo. Tell me what you think about federalism, the historical framework, what has happened, what can be done. And maybe you could expand on some of the themes I mentioned, which are the elements that tell us that the future in Argentina has to be federal. Good morning. Thank you, Juan, for sharing this session with me. You have taken the 100 Chivilcoy example from me, but I'd like to thank Aapresid for inviting me to this Congress. I have come to Buenos Aires for an Aapresid Congress. I hope it won't happen in Buenos Aires again, and we will be able to welcome you in Rosario next year, because we miss you. Sarmenio's question was, why doesn't the whole of Argentina look like Chivilcoy? Well, there are many discussions, and the federal body didn't participate in 1816 what was being done in Tucumán, and big American discussions, the Hamilton-Madison discussions. There are many examples in the past history, but I believe we have an opportunity to challenge everything and to go to the facts. As I come from a city that on Monday celebrated its anniversary, its 172nd anniversary of becoming a city, because it was a very important city from the point of view of industry, metal industry. and ports, and agricultural production in Argentina. Today we're still in the core of the agricultural production of Argentina. Many people think about farming in the wrong way. Today farming involves much more diversity, production, and today farming is biotechnology. Today, if you would ask me to define the future of the city of Rosario, well, clearly it's going to be biotechnology, the biosciences development. These are the unicorns that are appearing in the biotechnology field. So, what is the discussion about federalism about? The country now has to decide who will be doing the things and how the funding will be obtained. The government or the federal government kept on doing more and more things, and the resources were usually invested in Buenos Aires, in the center of Buenos Aires, or close to the most important cities in Buenos Aires. And I believe this impacts everywhere, because in order to achieve the macroeconomic balance, it's very difficult to change things that have to be done in order to achieve macroeconomic balance. And in this case, usually the wealth is taken from the industries creating wealth. And this is related to the Argentina future, the RIGI, where will this apply? Biotechnology, oil, gas, and those large investments will be done in areas where the resources are usually not distributed. And if we have to solve the problem of transportation in Argentina, and we are mad about this, when you look at it from an objective point of view, we have 16 million people in Buenos Aires that pay transportation costs that are not enough to pay for the whole cost. The 4/5 of those tickets are paid by the government, and this is due to the buildup of resources in Buenos Aires. If Argentina understands today that we need a macroeconomic balance and this approach, which is sustainable in time, looking at the different productive development, we should take into account the geographic distribution of resources. Otherwise, subsidies, maintaining the subsidies in Buenos Aires, and the social problems you face when you take decisions that go against the current distribution of subsidies. We are at the difficult balance point in Argentina. It's not the only issue. But finally, things are done better and at a lower price when they are done closer to the place where they are going to be used. So we need to decentralize roles and activities. Of course, this is related to the decentralization of activities. The world is moving towards local government, to decentralization, to taxing and collecting capabilities of local governments, of reverse co-participation things. And nowadays in Argentina, we just have this discussion between the federal government and the local governments. If things are done closer to the territory, to the origin, the results are much better. I believe this is a very exciting time if the discussions focus on the concrete issues one at a time. Thank you, Pablo. I believe you always have a clear understanding of this issue of federalism, a federal approach, and now, well, of course, there are changes, there is freedom in the air, but my question is, what is the plan? I mean, in the positive sense, what do you ideas or what outlook do you have in the Secretary of Federal Development to achieve this federal development in Argentina, of course, you have to overcome a very difficult time in Argentina, but you have to take into account the long term, because the long term will come short term soon. Thank you. I'd like to thank Aapresid for inviting me to participate in this session. I was with Pablo at IDEA on Tuesday, and your question is thought-provoking. We have to understand why this government is a disruptive one. This administration is a disruptive one, and as everything is interconnected, the big problem of Argentina is the fact that in the last 123 years, in 113 there was fiscal deficit. And what is different in this administration is that the president came to office explaining this to all Argentinians. There is clear awareness of the macroeconomic imbalances and the consequences for society. Because at home we don't spend more than we earn. Nobody gets into debt after debt without being able to pay. Well, Argentina has gone through this scenario in 113 of the last 123 years. And the president explained that the problem in Argentina was public expenditure and fiscal deficit. Everybody has a magic solution saying, well, we reduce this, we do that. And it's not so easy, because we were facing a huge problem. We had to disassemble a time bomb, and it was a time bomb. In December 11, when we tried to understand what the trade debt of the private sector in Argentina was, and we didn't know it was 45 or 60 billion dollars. And the evolution of our problem was, well, it was always a fiscal problem. And how does the fiscal element relate to the federalism? Very often what we believe are the problems are the consequences of the way the deficit was funded. If we funded the deficit by issuing money to pay for the expenditures, well, the government could decide how to spend the money on what to invest in. Money was usually invested because of political needs. If you reduce expenditures, if you do away with the deficit, there is no arbitrary decisions any longer. And if you stop printing money, because you don't print money, neither to pay for the public debt, which is the deficit, nor to pay interest on the debt, because of public debt that was incurred to pay for the public expenditure, we have the current situation. Today, the Treasury doesn't spend on an arbitrary basis. We have 90% of the governors, Pablo, mayor also says, they all say this. On Tuesday, the 3 governors of the central region of Argentina, the most important ones in Argentina, talked about fiscal surplus, taking care of resources, and about triggering the private sector participation for Argentina to grow. I believe this is the challenge, to create the conditions so that the private sector invests again, because this is important. We from the administration may organize the macroeconomic scenario, that will make it possible for a government that once it has had superávit for a long time to do what it really wants to do, cut down on taxes. But in order to achieve that point, you need to grow. And in order to grow, you need the private sector to invest. And I believe those investments will make it to inland Argentina. And in my role, I realized that if you look at what is happening in Argentina nowadays, most of the important actions take place outside the province of Buenos Aires. And we're talking about big investments. NLG in Rio Negro, copper mines in San Juan and Mendoza, lithium mines in Catamarca and Salta, the ports and the infrastructure in Santa Fe, car manufacturing companies that want to manufacture electric or hybrid vehicles in Córdoba. So this is a challenge. And I hope we have 100 tandiles, 100 productive towns in inland Argentina. But I believe there's a change in mindset. Governors today are fully aware of the fact that what the federal government is doing nowadays is what the provinces have been doing for many years. Córdoba, Mendoza have been having a fiscal superar for many years, and I believe this macroeconomic scenario, which is organized with reduced inflation, with lower interest rates, so the capital can be used by the private sector. All these elements will be the engine so that all the productive towns in Argentina start moving ahead. And most of these towns are not in the province of Buenos Aires, or are not Buenos Aires. They have huge growth possibilities because right now they are in a stagnation stage. And just like Pablo, I'm honest but hopeful. Or I may be naive, but I'm hopeful. It's really encouraging to hear somebody say something which is so sensible, because you have said this clearly. We shouldn't spend more than what we earn. Give back to the private sector the capabilities to invest, to save. This is really exciting, and it creates lots of hope when we hear this from the Production Secretary. Pablo, back to you. Could you please talk about Rosario a little bit more, because I said that it is unfulfilled promise halfway, actually, but there are many things that we can see in Rosario to show that the federal approach is the future. Pablo has already mentioned this, but you could talk about Rosario, share examples of this. I said 100 Tandil cities, and my wife told me, don't say 100 Tandiles. I hope we had 100 cities of 150,000 inhabitants with a strong local industry to reduce poverty and to create possibilities and chances for many people who don't have them nowadays. Now, in the municipalities, what can be done to develop that federal approach?
First thing that I would like to say, and we should be very cautious. We need a coordinated action between the federal state, the provincial, and the local or municipal. And as a result of that, we had reduced the criminal rate in 8%. And we were right then about something. If the state, given the size of our state, can be organized and coordinated, we win and we can defeat any criminal network. This is the first stage. And then the urbanism and how you make the leap from the limiting factor of our leading-edge technologies and leading-edge companies, right? Because we are developing technological companies, and what was global in the 19th century has to do with the development of human capital for knowledge technology, and also prevents young people to be involved in criminal activities. So what do I think and what do I believe in? The scale is the determining factor. It's impossible to consider the whole range. Argentina had 25%, 30, 32, 42. That was the weight of the state over the years. And on top of what Juan said, we have a geographical issue, because as we don't have the 20 Córdobas, the 100 Chivilcoys, or the 100 Tandils. But the mega structure of Argentina is impossible to address and to finance. So after the first challenge that includes attracting investments, so Rosario is the area per inhabitant that leads the GDP. And then we can, okay, let me tell you the good things about the city. And that is not a result of my administration, but the production and core is in Rosario and Córdoba, in knowledge technology and other geographical niches that develop because of the growth of the areas. What we are missing today, we need more trust in our location because we attained the fiscal balance, and as a result of that, we, as a city, could issue a government bond that is traded in the stock exchange, on the stock market, that allows us to build ditches and roads. That is the dream of any mayor, that is to say, to pave roads forever, because we complete basic infrastructure in the different neighborhoods. It took us 8 months to get the approval, and I am thankful because in the previous administration they didn't get that approval. But in December we were talking about 5.4 billion, but when we managed to issue the bond, well, the amount was different. The amount was different. There was a devaluation of the value. And there are many things to think about, because behind that, we need a geographical reconversion of Argentina. Otherwise, the state will gain or go back to the 40-something percent points. When we analyze federalism, we have the United States as the best example, right? Republicans versus Democrats. So when we see that type of federalism, what do we see? That is to say, sales tax that are local or state, that they collect these taxes, corporate sales tax, but at a state level, that is to say, full local development. The capital city of the states and other smaller cities in the state, but it's a clear distribution of utilities. They are closer to the cities, and I'm not saying that Argentina can reach that level of federalism, but what about a uninominal system? That is to say, the different counties select the representatives. Wisconsin, for example, representative will not go against those that elected him. So we can discuss this, but I think that the future agenda is founded on the macroeconomic. If we have macroeconomic stability and there is encouragement or attraction of investments, the misalignment between the geographical location where the wealth is created and distributed, and that is what we need to break. And this happened over the past 50 years. Until the 60s, Argentina's geographical makeup was completely different from today's makeup. Perhaps in 20, 30 years, we can strike a balance, because we are not going to have fiscal balance if we need so many points to solve an aggregate demand, aggregated from a social, cultural point of view, as it is the case of AMBA or Buenos Aires. Without those 5 percentage points, today we have to pay attention to the elections. 17 million people defined an election that are the ones that need the resources, but that they do not generate the resources. Well, it is very challenging. Tomorrow in the morning, there is a presentation about representation, and we will talk about uninominal elections. But I think that that is part of the agenda. Sooner or later will be a topic of discussion. Juan, back to you about the general guidelines. In our previous conversations, you said we will have the development when we get back our savings capacity. And what are you doing in this regard? Lending facilities, lending strategies, are you planning about that? Or how are you planning these topics? Of course, once the macroeconomic is stable and everything is connected. Macroeconomy is stable without deficit, and as a result of that, there is no money printing, which we used to pay debt. And the banks were working as lenders of the state. And these Argentine pesos will be available to finance the private sector. And that is a huge challenge. When we took office, 3.3 of the GDP of Argentina were loans to the private sector, 3.3%. Chile has 85%, Brazil above 65%, and Uruguay 70%. That means that financing the GDP was used by the state, basically, and the state used it to generate this vicious circle of covering an very, very big public spending. And that's why that is included in the May Pact. We need to go back to that percentage that we mentioned before, this 25%. And understanding that this 25% of GDP to keep the public spending, you still have 70 years of fiscal deficit in the past. So we have to put this into context. What the Ministry of Economy did was amazing, reducing the GDP without reaching a crisis as in 2001 or other crisis during Menem's administration. Even though many people promoted that idea, why don't we explode the country and then we put everything in order? That 3.3% went up to 4.8 GDP, and most of the funding is here in Agroactiva, Expo Agro. Nobody would have thought back in December, none of the consultants or analysts that were part of the private sector, nobody imagined the possibility of having private lending. And we do believe that the lending facility is the engine of development, and loans should be available for the people, for production. And first of all, we are putting the macroeconomics in order and reducing the inflation, because with such variable rates, producers, farmers will not take loans. And we are trying to be also creative. Last Tuesday in Esperanza, Santa Fe, we announced lending facilities in liters of milk, so as for dairy farmers to match their production with their debt. So if a dairy facility has a farm that produces 40% of what the farm needs to pay, well, you know that you can take advantage of that lending facility. And we sold all the loans, let's say sold, in 4 hours. And that is very encouraging. And that shows that the farmers want to get loans. They want to become more technological. They want to improve. And if we can tie production with the debt or that they have, that is a natural hedge. That is to say, it doesn't mean the ROFEX or future exchange rates. If I produce beef, I pay with beef or soybean, or and that is what we are working on. And from the state, well, we need to let farmers produce at ease, stop pressing the agricultural sector. One of our key challenges is to remove the red tape of the state. We have a lot of regulations on everything. We don't even know about what. We remove the RUCA so farmers can sell their grains freely. And if we go back to the very beginning, that was crazy. These were measures adopted by former Minister Moreno to reduce foreign trade. And I encourage you, because we are a Secretariat of Production, Agriculture, Fishery, and Cattle Raising that is open. All unnecessary regulations that bother you, or every paperwork, is a minute that you lose in producing, or it's an expenditure, or an accountant charging you more. And I think that that is fundamental to start to unleash production and start doing what we know what to do, which is producing without planning. At the same time, it's very complicated, so we need planning. Plan ahead of time. And Argentine farmers are claimed to be, or are claimed to lack sophistication. I guess that they are very sophisticated. So you all plan, you all have your production cost in an Excel spreadsheet. And if the public administration changes you the different regulations, the different tariffs due to political decisions, it's not your call. And that's why we need to have a stable macroeconomic in place. Thank you. It's very clear, very logical, very reasonable, and I'm very happy. And Pablo, 4-5 minutes are left for some final thoughts and to tell us, just for wrap-up, your view, and probably then some QA questions from the audience.
It will be very hard to have a discussion on federalism in a country that doesn't understand how production takes place. I was talking to the son of a beef-related company who's working at Muller. Muller is a company that is analyzing a combination of animal protein and plant-based protein. Maybe you could explain it in some other ways, but there will be an important change here. Bioceres, many companies are involved in this. It's a different country. Sorry for saying this. I could mention at least 20 or 30 undertakings, startups or large companies, bio companies that help for the marketing of agricultural products. Ecosystems play a key role, and they take place, they are located around the cities. And I come from a city which, for many reasons, is part of a different country. When I meet Juan in Rosario, I hope to meet him at the Aapresid Congress next year. I feel excited when I hear what he is saying. I believe people have to get excited about the ecosystem related to production. And this, of course, will involve political decisions related to resources so that the ecosystems may actually recover many of the persons who left their origins and came to live around this big hub, which is the current city of Buenos Aires. So we have to change this balance. And if we change it, we will have positive consequences. I'm certain about this. And of course, there are historical reasons that would support this too. I'd like to thank Aapresid for inviting me, and please let's trust that this will happen. We face the pandemic of violence in Rosario. You don't need to do extraordinary things. You have to do many ordinary things, one on top of the other. I believe we really love to be passionate about things. This is not a political discussion, but when it comes to managing many everyday activities, actions, one on top of the other creates sustainability. And I know that inland Argentina has a lot to contribute here. And of course, I believe now we have the right conditions so that this is fully understood. Well, you mentioned the motto without using it. Everything is connected. Everything has to be connected. Everything is related to everything. Juan, we have already discussed this. That's why I dare to ask this question now here. There is a negative tax. There are negative taxes, and we all talked about enabling people to save, but withholdings. I believe this is a good venue to discuss the government's point of view about withholdings. And finally, I would like some thoughts, some closing thoughts. But Pablo just mentioned this, and you mentioned this too. We offered loans, and they were taken up in 4 hours because farmers want to produce, they want to create, and withholdings, if you do away with withholdings, farmers will be able to save, to reinvest. First of all, I'd like to go back to what Pablo said, something Pablo said. My father used to say, hens eat little bits and they get a full stomach after that. And we look at the microeconomic scenario every day with the Ministry of Economy, all these deregulation measures, reducing tariffs, deregulation, the shelves, rules and regulations for supermarkets. We talked about each of them with the Minister of Economy because these are benefits for farmers. But it's clear that we cannot put the macroeconomic balance at risk. But I play 2 roles. I'm a farmer myself, and my family owns a textile industry. I always say this. I was self-subsidizing myself. I would buy the clothes or at an official exchange rate, and I was selling the products at a controlled exchange rate when I was selling soybeans. So this gap was very bad for farmers. That's why we need an organized macroeconomic framework. So we need sustained economic framework. We need fiscal surplus. And once we achieve this, taxes will be reduced. And in September, the Impuesto País will come to an end. It hits inputs bought by farmers. In December, the Impuesto País will go away for good. So that's why we have not submitted this issue of Impuesto País to Parliament, because otherwise it would have been impossible to do away with it. So we clearly know, and we want to explain this. I believe it's obscene, actually, the number of taxes paid by farmers and producers in Argentina. I'm not talking about withholdings only. I'm talking about gross income tax, VAT, municipal fees that are growing significantly in many districts, and they even have an impact on foodstuff. But I believe that right now, as said here, right, I think the Secretary for Agriculture, Fisheries, and Cattle in Argentina, I believe it's worthwhile working along this path because all of us are fully convinced that what we do, that all our efforts will be a benefit for the productive sector by way of tax reductions. And in order to have a growth in GDP, we need investments. And this brings about surplus. I believe investments have to be private sector investments. We don't need to explain to you how you produce. We don't to develop 5-year production plans because the ones who know how to produce or farm, it's you. A person sitting at the desk cannot explain or tell anybody that what he has to plant in inland Argentina. It makes no sense. We have to create. It's our role to create the macroeconomic conditions so that you get the funding you need. We have to stop bothering you with unnecessary rules and regulations so that production can take off. The more free we were in the past in Argentina, the best the country did. And I believe this is what we achieve. And once the production takes off, inland Argentina has everything it needs to grow and excel, because the most important investment projects in Argentina and most of the talent for that development to take place should go to inland Argentina, and is in inland Argentina currently. And if I can say some closing remarks, make the best out of us. The economic team is a team made out of experts, of technical experts coming from the private sector, and our only goal is that Argentina will progress and fare well. We are working for you. And I don't know if this will happen many times. We are not going to run for any office. Once we are done with our public servant jobs, we will go back to the private sector, and this makes a big difference. That's why we are open to questions. That's why we know that you do your job much better than we could tell you to do it. So please make the most out of us, but be patient, because we are considering many projects which the farming sector has been asking for a long time. And it's not only reduction of withholdings, and these are not isolated measures. Everything is related to everything. When we reduced export tariffs for beef, it was not to get more cows to be sold, more mothers to be sold, because we believe that breeders, if they get a better value for their cows, they can keep their heifers, have a better quality in their herds, so with better genetics. If Parliament supports us, we will achieve a quick depreciation of pedigree bulls, because the quality of herds will be better. We are also going to change the way the herds taxes are paid on herds in Argentina, so that taxes are paid when we sell, not when we buy cattle. When we reduce withholdings on pork, beef, well, we were thinking about the production process as a whole. So clearly we are thinking about the micro scenario. We are thinking about you. We believe that whenever possible, withholdings will be reduced, but we are also working in other areas. We're doing a fast acceleration for irrigation systems. We are going to add faster acceleration for loans for SMEs. If we have loans, if you have loans that can be paid, and if we have a fast amortization, this will be an incentive to increase production, because production has been stagnated in Argentina for the last 20 years. So having a production sector talking with the level of knowledge you have, talking with so much knowledge about cattle breeding, well, it's really good for us. There's just one question which I believe it's related to what we have been talking about. Any of you or both of you may answer it, and it's like, what would you suggest for productions of the northwest of Argentina, where transportation to the ports is not a sustainable tool or sustainable approach? On Friday, we met with the Minister of Economy, the Governor of Salta, and representatives of the production sector in the northwest of Argentina. I believe Argentina has an issue. When we talk about competitiveness, we should not talk about devaluation. We had competitiveness through devaluation. We had terrible consequences. I believe the ley bases, the new Foundations Act that was passed a short time ago by Parliament, will bring about changes in infrastructure. We have been talking about railways, and having railways that go to the north of Argentina is key to reduce the logistic costs that have such a big impact on production. But we are also working in plans to promote the recovery of non-productive land with fast amortization of the irrigation systems and some tax incentives so that primary production may also take off in northwest of Argentina. How come somebody has to take the grain from Córdoba to Tartagal for a feedlot? We are thinking of these approaches to change the production matrix in Argentina. And again, we would welcome any ideas you could submit to us. In this respect, railways. Argentina went through its first industrial and productive revolution. It was not because of the price of its products, but because of the competitiveness of the freight. If Roca meant something, the President Roca meant something, and this was his tool, his negotiation tool, but Roca's tool to become president was to extend the railway system in Argentina. So when people would say that the railway system in Argentina had been developed to go to the center, to Buenos Aires, it was just the other way around. It was done so that the northwest production could go to the exit ports. So we should pay attention to infrastructure selectivity. The northwest of Argentina lost almost 2.5 million inhabitants in the 60s with the Larkin Plan, which closed secondary railway lines. And this is not an ideology-based discussion, which is the kind of discussions usually have in Argentina. We get passionate if the railways, today the railways may also attract investment, such as we have an RIGI for productive processes, we could have an RIGI for infrastructure because things were done properly in the past. If you look at this from the ports point of view, but if you look at different ports going from Timbues to San Nicolas, we have the largest export complex in the world. Let's think what would happen if we were competitive on top of it. But in April, we sold soybean. For the first time, soybean was coming from Corrientes to be exported. This hadn't happened for many, many years. They had stopped producing, but they are 900 kilometers away along roads or paths. If we had infrastructure, it would enable those farmers to send their production to the harbor much faster without using trucks. Well, we could make progress. So here we have to discuss what the role of the state is here. We have to adjust it, taking into account the practical elements. Otherwise, it will be a theoretical discussion based on roles and functions. Let's talk about freight. Freight is a problem for competitiveness in Argentina. We, from different layers in government, may make a contribution to improve and reduce the cost of freight. Thank you very much. I hope that we all leave here with a hopeful message, hoping for the best future for Argentina. Agricultural sector, well, if we didn't have hope, we won't exist, because whenever we plant a seed, we are waiting for the rainfall. We are thinking about using fertilizers or not. Our decision-making horizon is at least 6 months ahead. Juan mentioned future conditions to foster investments in Argentina. Pablo is saying that there are technology breakthroughs, there are capabilities, capacity, that is technology, biotechnology. So with all these things Juan has mentioned in Argentina, I believe that the corn from the northwest of Argentina, well, maybe this corn will be turned into something else. We should add value in inland Argentina with industries in the farm. Some days ago, somebody told me, well, it's really weird to see an ethanol tank coming out of a farm, and this is happening in Córdoba. There is a farm that produces ethanol and biogas, and they employ 125 people from the nearby village with better salaries. This is going to create new opportunities for inland Argentina. So, and this may help us to overcome the structural poverty we have in Argentina. And with the changes that are about to happen and with the power of the agro-industrial sector in Argentina and all the tools we have, I believe we will achieve this. Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause.